Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, July 22nd, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, revisiting Steve Bannon's promise to deconstruct the administrative state. And in the face of massive protest, Puerto Rican governor says he won't seek re-election, but won't resign. And probably later will seek re-election. Meanwhile, Capitol Hill budget deal in the works. Punts the debt ceiling 2 years to the next presidential term. Because why put extra pressure on the Republicans? As AOC calls for an investigative commission of family separations, it's a growing mental health crisis amongst migrants as suicide attempts are soaring. Jared Kushner heads to the Middle East, and so what? Iran arrests 17 alleged CIA spies. Richard Neal's primary opponent makes it official, and with the debate about a week away, it's looking more and more like a four-way race. And Washington braces for Mueller testimony coming on Wednesday. All this and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. A little warm in the office today. So you may hear a little bit of sound of some fans. The air conditioning we have just is not capable of performing in this type of weather. It's basically what it comes down to. We have one unit in here, and it's not sufficient.
Seen better days.
Seen better days. We had a couple of days. We have a couple of days like this every summer. It's going to be dripping in sweat. That's just the nature of the business.
As if we're not cranky enough already.
Right. I mean, it's not really the nature of the business. Actually, it's one of the things that are generally, specifically, not in the nature of the business. You don't want to do a show that's on video and sweat profusely.
Or be around electrical equipment.
But yes. But nevertheless, that's what we have. Just a reminder, the AM Quickie is now in your Majority Report audio feed. Check that out. We're going to spin it off to its own feed eventually. It'll be super easy for you to sign up for it. But still working on it. And if you have comments, email us at majorityreporters@gmail.com. And we will take your opinions and absorb them. We've made some changes based on comments that we've had. And continue to refine. You can say, like, well, I would like this at X amount of time every morning, or Y amount of time every morning, or I'm interested in these type of stories, or this is my general overall feel. Personal preference aside, we won't necessarily, like, if you write, like, I don't like jazz, I like rock. Well, okay. But there are some things that we're responding to. A lot of things to get to today. I want to revisit something Steve Bannon said years ago now, I guess, at the start of the Trump administration, which does not get sufficient attention in my estimation. But before we go there, let's check in on the job that Republicans are doing trying to clean up the mess Donald Trump made. And, you know, the thing is that you can only go so racist in the Republican Party. And here's why. Because they still need a sufficient number of white Republican women living in the suburbs. And for the most part, apparently, as long as they hear someone say, that's not racist, they're generally okay with it. But sometimes it gets just so obvious, and by so obvious, I mean super obvious. Because even Donald Trump's like, you know, when Donald Trump does it, they can all write it off as it's Trump being Trump. He's being comedic or wacky or really raucous. But when it starts coming out of the mouths, like literally when you have a whole arena chanting something that is racist, it becomes a little bit more concerning. They start to get a little worried. And they send out the whole team. We saw Fox and Friends do this on multiple occasions where they said he's being comedic or there's things are raucous or nobody can be held responsible for their racism. But now they got to send out to even more people, and particularly in Wisconsin. Because remember, there are 3 states that Donald Trump won that allowed him to win the Electoral College and become president. So one of those people they've sent out this week to sort of really shave off the edges of send them back is Ron Johnson. And Ron's senator from Wisconsin and not very bright.
I have to start by asking you about President Trump's tweet just this morning, continuing his attacks on those progressive congresswomen. Here's what he tweeted in part. I don't believe the 4 congresswomen are capable of loving our country. Do you agree with the president that they are not capable of loving the United States?
Pause it. Can we just stop here and just think about the absurdity of this question? Capable, like, are they capable of loving? Like, I don't even know what that means. Is anybody capable of loving a country?
It's like worse than a thought crime. It's like a feelings crime.
It's weird. It's really weird. But continue.
Good morning, Dana. You know, I would say in general, the whole America love it or leave it is not a new sentiment. You know, back in the 60s, that wasn't considered racist. I just find it very unfortunate that so many parts of our public debate right now are getting immediately stuck inside a racial framework, when what I would like to see is us moving toward that colorblind society. I was hoping when President Obama was elected, it would really go a long way toward healing the racial divide so we can concentrate on these enormous challenges facing this nation, where we really could embrace Dr. King's sentiment that let's judge people on the basis of the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. So I would like to see everybody reduce their rhetoric, and let's start dealing with these enormous challenges facing this nation in good faith effort. You know, Dan, I truly believe that Americans, by and large, all have. All right,
pause it for 1 second while we get into the pablum, because I don't want to. First of all, the America love it or leave it. He's skipping a step. He's skipping a step or 2 here in this. One, like the idea that they hate this country. These specific 4 women hate this country. And that they should all go back from where they came from. 3 of them were born in this country. But then he's skipping to this whole thing of like love it and leave it. And we heard it back then when people were protesting against the country. Now, I'll remind you, these are 4 congresswomen, 3 of whom have spent previous time in government. These are not people who are going out, and I'm not saying there's any problem with it, but I'm just saying in terms of like drawing the analogy of love it and leave it was used against people who were burning American flags in the streets because of our involvement in Vietnam. They were not Congress people going and proposing bills to make the country more efficient, more humane, whatever it is. These are people by no stretch of the imagination, even on their terms, could you draw that parallel. And then I should also add, if you'll recall, that this love it or leave it came in the wake of the Civil Rights Movement, the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, and had a history. Love it or leave it may have been mainstreamed, but maybe the time to question what was actually the subtext was maybe back then. Here is a poster. I'm not sure when this is from. Probably back in the 20s, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, somewhere during Jim Crow, and this was actually very close to where Trump had his rally in North Carolina.
What a coincidence. This is Klan country. Love it or leave it. Back in the day, folks.
And look at the little intersectional message underneath it. Help fight communism and integration.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of what I want.
There you go.
We want to promote communism and integration.
So
it meant something totally different back then. Trying to focus on the character first message before we got into all this other mess, but liberals like to play identity politics. I have a question for you,
yeah,
Sam.
I don't know. Do we need to hear any more from Ron
I have a question
Johnson?
for you, Sam.
Yes.
Are you allergic to lavender?
I am.
We already know that, but do you love black people?
Sure. I mean, in general.
Then why do you want to take freedom away from them?
By
taking their freedom away.
By
Sam, where does freedom come from?
A tree? I don't know. They grow on trees.
Unbelievable. You beta male.
Oh, you're doing that that dude. What's that?
Martin Luther King Jr.
But who's the other guy?
Jesse Lee Peterson Jr.
Jesse Lee Peterson Jr.
Jesse Lee King Jr.
Yeah, Martin Jesse Lee Jr.
That's an off-ramp from that one.
I guess that's not for the main show.
We should probably save that one.
You should probably become a member
All
to
right.
hear more delightful impressions like that.
All right, one more clip of another. This time they brought out a family to basically say to the rest of the Republican Party, you're not really racist. Okay. This is now what does Mercedes Schlapp, what does she do? Oh, she's in the press shop for the president. And her husband, Matt Schlapp, is the head of CPAC. Is it
American Conservative Union?
Oh, the American Conservative Union, but they run CPAC. And he is the one who said to his formerly good friend, Michael Steele, that he was made GOP chair because he was black. And then, of course, Michael Steele, being extremely sensitive, got upset about that the only reason why he was picked was because he was black, and now they're not friends anymore.
He said Steele needed to show some grace because he's been critical of some of Trump's more conservative policies.
Right. Of course. And so here is Mercedes Schlapp explaining how the president is not happy at all with the chants that he inspired, sat and paraded around, as they were saying, and then tweeted out and reversed himself. I think somebody tweeted at me that on Friday I may have said he'll disavow it. I mean, if I did, it was completely knee jerk on my part. Of course, he's going to disavow it.
Wait,
but
you're talking about the disavow or the disavow?
He was going to disavow the disavowal.
Okay, yeah.
Retweets are not avowals, okay, guys.
And apparently he did that already. Here is George Stephanopoulos talking about Donald Trump's classic three-step disavowal of the disavowal.
Different way, but you keep talking about how the president disavowed the chant just yesterday, and I want to show it up on the screen right now. He sent around a tweet from a woman named Katie Hopkins, which says the new campaign slogan for 2020 is "Don't love it, leave it, send her back as the new lock her up." Well done to Team Trump. The president retweeted that tweet yesterday. That doesn't sound like he's disavowing the chant.
Look, he made it very clear that he disagreed with the chant, and I will tell you, He stands with those people in North Carolina across the country who support him. And why? Because they love America. They know that the president is fighting for them every day. And it's African Americans, it's Hispanics, it's women, it's men. I've been to those rallies. I've been to those events where they say, I love this country. I love the American flag. What are you seeing on the other side? You're seeing the squad dictating the rules of the Democratic Party, which is very clear that they're pushing forward, very disturbing statement.
So, in other words, let me explain what she just said. Yeah, the president heard from Tucker Carlson and Mark Levin that you should not back off this. And so he's back on it, and we're on it. And when you ask me about it, I'm not only going to, in a very sort of like a throwaway way, suggest that he did something, even though the later thing that he did undid the thing that he did. I'm going to now reiterate the whole point of the first thing he did and just do it in the way that I wish he had done it in the first place, so we didn't even have to go through the last two steps.
It's amazing, just the first part of her answer where she pivots from, yes, he does this vote, but also he supports those people who are in
supports those people, and then she goes on to say, and he also supports his original message that they're horrible. And I don't know if what happened after that, if George Stephanopoulos said later, you just basically said the thing that you just said that you were disavowing.
Right.
The chant.
Look, he made it very clear that he disagreed with the chant. And I will tell you, he stands with those people in North Carolina across the country who support him. And why?
Right. I mean, it's absurd. He stands with them and he disagrees with the chant, but that could be like he wanted the chant to last another 10 seconds and it didn't.
There wasn't enough spirit.
But I actually think that it's really important when they ask people like this questions on like mainstream cable shows that they be really clear that as problematic as this country is, that type of racism, that type of demagoguery is very specific to the Republican Party, and it is not mainstream, and it's not normal, and it's not what most people are looking for. Like, and the polls validate that. Like, there's only one segment that responds well to that, and it's definitely not Democrats, and it's not self-identified independents, and even some Republicans claim not to like it in the polls. So I don't want for a second them to be able to say like this is about the real America or any of that type of garbage. It's absolutely not true, and there's plenty of people who aren't on the left who don't.
This is all about.
I think that's actually quite important.
It's all about motivating the base to get it.
100%. I'm saying from a mainstream media perspective in terms of how you say like, hey, wait a second.
You have to understand the predicament they're in because they don't want to be bigoted towards these folks. They don't want to be bigoted towards these folks.
In the Loudest Voice in the Showtime show about Roger Ailes, there's a scene in the first episode where he talks about how we don't want to go for an audience of everybody. No. We want to go after a niche which is conservative.
A niche
viewers.
which is conservatives, exactly. And so fine, that's your propaganda cable network. But this does not represent. There's tons of people who might not be particularly left or woke or whatever. They don't like that kind of talk, and they understand it, and it should be very clear that this doesn't represent some type of norm.
Folks, support for today's show comes from Embark. That's sort of a funny name. Basically, Embark is a service which will help you determine your dog's DNA. It is the most accurate dog DNA test on the market. The Embark Dog DNA Test looks at over 250 breeds and 170 genetic health conditions to help you best care for your dog. I do not have a dog, but old Kelly does. And she has yet to receive it, but this is what she had to say. Embark's testing kit arrived promptly, and the saliva sample was easy and didn't take long to collect. I don't know. I don't know. Do you know if Edie was like a big salivator?
She looked like it.
I sent the sample back in their prepaid and addressed envelope and received confirmation of receipt soon after. I'm really looking forward to getting Edie's results this week because even though I think I know what breed she is, The results will include testing for 20 times more genes than other tests, along with her risk for over 160 diseases. This is especially important to me because most of the time it's complete guesswork when it comes to your dog's health. I can't wait to have a good idea of what to look out for as Edie grows up. There you go. I mean, that's a huge issue. Obviously, animals can't tell you what's wrong with them, and they say dogs and cats in particular keep a lot of health secrets until it's too late.
Yep, until it's really expensive.
Yep. Embark is the only company with stellar customer service and vets and veterinary geneticists on staff to talk through your results. Right now, for our listeners, Embark, I like the name, that's funny, has an exclusive summer offer you can't get anywhere else. Go to embarkvet.com. That's embarkvet.com. Use the promo code MAJORITY to save 15% off your dog DNA test kit. Discover your dog more than fur deep. Visit embarkvet.com and use the promo code MAJORITY to save. Do so now. Also, more than 70 sizes, including their signature half-cup sizes, Third Love designs bras with breast size and shape in mind for a perfect fit and a premium feel. Just answer a few simple questions via Third Love's Fit Finder quiz to find your perfect fit in 60 seconds. Then, thanks to Third Love's 100% fit guarantee, you can wear, wash, and put your bra to the test for 60 days. If you don't love it, return it, and Third Love will wash it and donate it to a woman in need. Hands down, this is the most comfortable bra you'll own, with straps that won't slip, tagless labels, lightweight, super thin memory foam cups. I do not wear bras, but we had our chief Majority Report bra tester. She writes, I like that they don't have a zillion options, so it's easy to choose something quickly. The fit is great. I usually have to return most bras I order online, even though they're in my size. I ordered 2, both fit. That almost never happens. Super comfortable for an everyday bra, but not as boring as most t-shirt bras. Subtle, cute details, so I don't feel basic. There you have it, folks. Third Love knows there's a perfect bra for everyone, and now they're offering my listeners 15% off your first order. Go to thirdlove.com/majority now to find your perfect fitting bra. Get 15% off your first purchase. That's thirdlove.com/majority for 15% off today. All right, let's dig into this. Brendan, will you check your IMs? Let's dig into this this story here. Let's play first this clip. This is Steve Bannon. He's no longer with us. I mean, he's alive, but he's no longer with the Trump administration. He's in Europe. And
he doesn't look super alive, but
he's as alive as he ever was. Let's put it that way. And this is him back in CPAC of 2017. That's over the summer, right? CPAC? And so we're really only talking 5 or 6 months into the election of Donald Trump. And here is what he had to say at CPAC.
Steve. Yeah, I think the same thing. I think if you look at the lines of work, I kind of break it out into 3 verticals or 3 buckets. The first is kind of national security and sovereignty, and that's your intelligence, the Defense Department, Homeland Security. The second line of work is what I refer to as economic nationalism, and that is Wilbur Ross at Commerce, Steve Mnuchin at Treasury, Lighthizer at Trade, Peter Navarro, Stephen Miller, these people that are rethinking how we're going to reconstruct our trade arrangements around the world. The third...
Pause it. I will note one thing. That, and I'm not sure about Lighthizer, but I have a feeling. What? Every single one of those people that he just mentioned back in the summer of 17, despite the fact that we've had, 40 top Trump officials, I'm just pulling that number out of my arse, as it were, but have had to go. The only ones that remain are the ones that he just mentioned.
Around the world. The third, broadly, line of work is what is deconstruction of the administrative state. And if you, so I think the three most important things. I think one of the most pivotal moments in modern American history was his immediate withdrawal from TPP. That got us out of a trade deal and let our sovereignty come back to ourselves. The people, the mainstream media don't get this, but we're already working in consultation with the Hill. People are starting to think through a whole raft of amazing and innovative bilateral relationships, bilateral trading relationships with people that will reposition America in the world as a fair trading nation and start to bring jobs, high value added manufacturing jobs back to the United States of America. On the national security part, it was certainly the first two EOs that you've started to see implemented here over the last couple of days under General Kelly, and that is the rule of law is going to exist when you talk about our sovereignty and you talk about immigration. General Kelly and Attorney
Pause
General,
it for 1 second. I want to make something clear. When he's talking about national security, he's not talking about terrorism. He's not talking about anything other than immigration.
Demographics.
He's talking about demographics. And he's talking about militarizing our immigration policies. Okay, good.
He's talking about securing a future for white children.
Attorney General Sessions are adamant, that, and you're going to start to see, I think, with the defense budget we're going to talk about next week when we bring the budget out, and also with certain things about the plan on ISIS and what General Mattis and these guys think. I think you'll start to see the other part of that. But the third, this regulation, every business leader we've had in is saying not just taxes, but it is also the regulation. And I think if you look at these cabinet appointees, they were selected for a reason, and that is the deconstruction. The way the progressive left runs is if they can't get it passed, they're just going to put it in some sort of regulation in an agency. That's all going to be deconstructed, and I think that's why this regulatory thing is so important.
We had Dr.
So Mick Mulvaney was also one of those original cabinet appointees who came in at the Office of Management and Budget. And when it became clear that his project of slashing the budget was not going to happen, right? Our spending has skyrocketed, in part largely because of the tax cuts. This budget bill that they're talking about now will provide no cuts, and they'll kick the debt ceiling 2 years down the road. I'll talk about that later. I just note that so that you can be clear on what they're talking about when their agenda is. It's not about shrinking the size of government in terms of dollars. It is shrinking the capacity of government to make sure that profits are not privatized on the backs of social expenses that we all bear. That's basically what it comes down to. That's what deconstructing the regulatory state means. And we talked a little bit about this story early in the week, but I just wanted to because to highlight this stuff because it's not being borne out. And I keep thinking about the interview that we did, I think it was in December of 2016, with Sam Bagenstos, who was a DOJ, who was in the DOJ under Clinton and then again under Obama. He said 8 years at the DOJ under the Bush administration not destroyed, but seriously hampered that agency. That it took at least 4 years to rebuild it in many respects. And I think what we're seeing under Trump is a far more severe assault. I think far worse than even that you got under 8 years of Bush. They are looking to destroy these agencies permanently. They're not looking, remember, they want to cut them, right? They couldn't name them, but they wanted to cut them. But instead of cutting them, what they're doing is they're hollowing them out, which is worse in many respects because we just presume that they're there and that these agencies are functioning to provide us the same sort of governmental services that they have in the past, and they're not. I'd mentioned this story about the USDA the other day. I'm going to reiterate it. The USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture Department, is leaving Washington, D.C. and moving to Kansas City. 2/3, I want you to just contemplate wherever you work. What would happen if you lost 2/3 of the employees? And particularly ones that are like highly specialized. If you lost 2/3 of the employees over the course of a 2 or 3 month period. So everyone was given a choice. You either move or you leave the agency. 2/3 of them declined to move. 99 of 171 employees at the Economic Research Service. This is a federal statistical agency, part of the USDA. Who's going to use federal statistics the most? Other agencies and lawmakers. Where are they located? They're located in Washington. Are they just going to look at a piece of paper? No, they're going to want to sit down with the people who have developed these statistics. They want to find out the nuances behind it, what accounts for this. You meet in person. If you work in any type of business, if you work remotely, you understand the relevance of close proximity, even in this telecommunicating world. Close proximity. At the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, which manages a $1.7 billion portfolio in scientific funding, 151 of 224 employees declined to relocate. That agency is going to be restaffed with people who have no idea what the agency does, have no history with the agency. Many of these people are scientists who have been there for literally a decade or two. And not only have they been there for a decade or two, they represent decades worth of institutional knowledge because they were trained by people who were there 10, 15, 20, 30 years earlier. And if you've ever been involved with a business that has high turnover, you understand the implications of that. I don't care if you own a restaurant and you have to replace all of your waiters each week. I mean, forget about it. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Land Management is also being subjected to the same thing. It would remove 300 employees from a key Interior Department agency, among them the majority of top managers, and move them and disperse them out west to different states. If I wanted to dismantle an agency, this would be in my playbook, said Steve Ellis, who retired as BLM's deputy director in 2016 after nearly 4 decades in government service. Transferring so many employees out of Washington could complicate the agency's relationship with Capitol Hill. It's the vast majority of management staff and getting them out. It's important that these agencies have a significant imprint in D.C., said the former head of the agency. Meanwhile, at HHS, Health and Human Services, apparently there's been a decent amount of telecommuting. They come in, I don't know if it's 2 days a week or 3 days a week or how it works. But the idea is that Washington, D.C. is more expensive. People spend a lot of time in their car. A lot of this agency's work does not involve direct communications with staff on the Hill. They still come in, and the agency is now demanding that people come in as a way of putting pressure on them. They have done a survey, and the survey found that many people would leave HHS if they institute this. And it appears that's why they're contemplating doing it. When we talk about deconstruction of the administrative state, the labor secretary. Wait a second, two more things. We've seen what's happening with the EPA in terms of regulation. They're rolling back specific regulations. They've also, and I mentioned this briefly the other day, they are eliminating the ability of individuals or community advocates to appeal against EPA-issued pollution permits before a panel of agency judges. Now, industrial permit holders, they can still appeal to this board, but individuals or community advocates can't. So if you want to fight an EPA rule that has been issued now, and you live in a community and you're being, well, here's an example. Emerson Addison, an unemployed English teacher in Clare County, Michigan, last year filed an appeal with the board after the EPA issued a permit to the Muskegon Development Company to inject water into a defunct oil well in Addison's community in an effort to reconstitute the well. I want you to contemplate now what the possible damage could be done by injecting water into an old oil well. If any of you live in a rural area, you understand the implications of this. You have a water supply. There are aqueducts under the ground, or aquifers. And you get stuff into there, you're cooked. Mr. Addison feared that in the process, contaminated water would leak from the well into the local water supply. This is a poor area, he said. Most people don't have the money to fight something like this in court. That's what the purpose of this board was, because anybody could go to the board and appeal a ruling. In fact, in April, the Environmental Appeals Board sent the permit back to the EPA for revision, ruling that it wasn't clear if the agency had sufficiently considered public comments or the effects of the plan on the poor and minority members of the nearby community. Well, that process, gone. Gone. It'll still exist. If you're a permit holder, it just won't exist if you're a community anymore or an individual. Appointing Eugene Scalia to be labor secretary. As you know, he was the son of the blessedly late Antonin Scalia. He has spent most of his career at a white shoe law firm fighting government regulation. He's done legal work for Ford Motor, Steve Wynn Casinos, UBS, UPS, MetLife, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the American Petroleum Institute, the Business Roundtable. Really, I mean, if you wanted a who's who of people, of entities that have attacked labor over the years. In a 2012 profile, Wall Street Journal called him one of the industry's go-to guys for challenging financial regulations. In 2006, he helped Walmart fight against a Maryland law that would have required companies with more than 10,000 workers to either spend at least 8% of their payroll costs on healthcare or pay into a state Medicaid fund. We know why Acosta got fired was ostensibly because he gave a sweetheart deal to Jeffrey Epstein. It also turns out that Mick Mulvaney, who's now the chief of staff, right, who's been there since the beginning, who after it became clear that he wasn't going to be able to slash the government's budget because Donald Trump realized you need to pay money out to get elected. He went on to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. There, he basically shut the agency down. He didn't have the ability to dismantle it, couldn't get Congress to cut its funding, so he basically just stopped all of its enforcement procedures. I don't think they've brought a single enforcement procedure in the past 3 years. So I think largely this is his project. He had chewed out Alex Acosta during a meeting this year. Because, according to the Washington Post, he was dragging his feet on regulation rollbacks desired by business interests and was on thin ice as a result. What else do we have? OSHA has the lowest number of inspectors it's had in decades. It is doing the fewest number of in-depth investigations into the health and safety of workers than anybody apparently can remember. I should just add that the EPA just recently also decided that its investigation into chlorophyllis that creates neurological defects in kids, we're going to go ahead with that one. This is the project, and this is just the ones that we know about. I mean, God knows, we know at the the Department of Education, all of the regulations regarding for-profit universities and colleges completely roll back. All you need to do is look at the stock portfolios, the stock funds that trade in that to know how significant that is. The only other thing I can tell you, and the Trump administration is quietly, and this gets to that point about Steve Bannon when he talks about national security. What he's talking about is literally the hue of national security, like literally the color of our country. Because the Trump administration, according to the LA Times 2 or 3 days ago, has quietly dismantled or cut back multiple programs that were created after September 11th. Oh, they're not going to be spying on people as much? No, that's not what it is. That detect and prevent terrorism involving weapons of mass destruction. In other words, scientists who are developing ways to assess whether a nuclear suitcase is coming in through shipping and whatnot. I would imagine this stuff slowed down commerce in some fashion. They have canceled training exercises. There have been scores of scientists and policy experts who have left. Paul Ryan, not the horrible one, but a retired Navy Rear Admiral, said what we had done in the past was analytically based. What are the threats? Where can we get the most return on the taxpayer's investment for security? He led the Homeland Security's Domestic Nuclear Detection Office, and he said, we're not as secure as we were 18 months ago. So you have all of this assault on the administrative state. Remember, there was also a lot of stories by, I think if you look into Jeff Hauser, I think there was a number of stories talked about how the Trump administration was putting in basically shadow heads at all these agencies. People who did not have to be confirmed by the Senate because they were supposedly temporary, and they just keep putting in a successive number of temporary heads who are just basically tasked with destroying an agency. This is super easy to understand. Demolition is much easier than building something. Demolition is much easier than maintaining something. You can do demolition wrong, but it only just creates more of a mess or is slightly more dangerous. But in this instance, the danger is not to you, it's to the people who use these services. And the mess, nobody cares. There's one other track on this assault on the administrative state, and this doesn't seem to be going as well for the Republicans, and that's at the Supreme Court. This can change, but we kept talking this year about a couple of cases. One was Kaiser. I might be mispronouncing that. Kaiser. In the past, you've heard me talk about the Chevron doctrine, which is what the court ruled in mid-1980s, where the court determined that when Congress is unambiguous in terms of passing a statute and empowering an agency to carry out that statute, you have to defer to the expressed intent of Congress. But there are times where Congress does not directly address the precise question at issue. So Congress says to the EPA, you regulate any material that is toxic. But they didn't know about compound triple Z. It had not been developed, or people weren't aware of it, or wasn't being in use. And the EPA finds this is toxic, so we're going to regulate it. Congress didn't say regulate compound triple Z. It just said find stuff that's toxic. So if the statute is silent or ambiguous with respect to a specific issue, the question that the court settled was whether the agency's answer is based on a permissible construction of the statute. So it gives wide berth to the agency to sort of assess whether it has authority here.
Not being absolute literalists.
Well,
literally do your job, not just because, that doesn't specifically say X.
So basically, Chevron says that an agency can interpret a statute unless it's in clear contradiction to what Congress wanted. There is another doctrine called the Auer, A-U-E-R doctrine, that came from a case in the late 90s, Auer v. Robbins, that allows an agency to interpret its own regulation unless it's obviously erroneous or inconsistent. So in other words, if the agency says, compound triple Z cannot be used in any type of procedure that might allow it to possibly seep into groundwater. And the agency deems wait a second, you're doing construction with this material? We determined that it could seep into groundwater. So the court's going to defer to the agency's ability to make that determination. And this guy, James Kaiser, was seeking disability benefits for PTSD from the VA. The VA in 1983 determined that Kaiser didn't suffer from service-related PTSD. In 2007, the agency reversed its finding, but did not provide him retroactive benefits. Kaiser said that determination of the VA was wrong, and he wanted the Supreme Court to overturn Auer v. Robbins to say that the agency did not have the ability to make that policy, essentially. And the court ended up refusing. Right-wingers have been trying to push this for a long time, and it's not clear to me that they're done. But so on the courts right now, we're somewhat protected, but we'll see. But in terms of practice, it's going to take it's going to take multiple terms of an administration that is committed to rebuilding these agencies so that they can actually just function and do what they're supposed to do. It's hard to build institutions. And once they get destroyed, it's hard to rebuild them. And I don't care whether it's like, the U.S. government short-circuiting institutions in Guatemala, or whether it's Donald Trump's administration and Mick Mulvaney stripping away institutional knowledge and human capital from these agencies that have been built to protect us. So it's something to keep an eye on, and it's something to keep in mind. They're not going to talk about it on CNN when they talk about the implications of this election or anything that the Trump administration is doing. But it's hugely important to just sort of your daily life, particularly if you are a person who is living in poverty or near poverty, or a person of any type of marginal community, or communities that have less political power, or frankly, if you're, anybody who's not a corporation
doesn't want your kid to have brain damage.
Damage.
That's the thing. Like, I don't put a huge amount of stock into maybe I should a bit more into like the kind of Lakoff stuff of like language framing, but I just feel like dismantling the administrative state sounds so much more exciting than, like apartheid and getting food poisoning. Right? Like, there's nothing like that. That sounds so grand and theoretical. This is just Republican deregulation.
Right. Well,
it's just bad for you.
Lawlessness.
Like, lawlessness, whatever you want to call it, but it is not. It's not like, yes, let's apply like brilliant management theories to the government so it's better. Which I feel like that's sort of like what he's cueing off when he says that. That's like Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich did all of that stuff. I read about how he was always referencing like trendy 90s management theory.
Yes.
So it's like, yeah, here's the bill. We're going to get rid of, pharma regulations to make it easier for heart medication to end up like, exploding your heart or whatever they were doing. And the language is like, like Edward S. Deming showed that you can reinvent the corporation and blah, blah, blah process. And it's like, dude, you're just doing handoffs to corporations. That's it.
Yeah. This is there was 10 years ago, libertarian arguments of like the problem is corruption,
right?
And it's because corporations buy our government, and so the way to keep corporations from corrupting our government is to make the government so small that corporations have nothing to get from them. But this is the point of this: is there is a dynamic that's at play here. Someone's going to fill this vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. If there is a vacuum of power as to what happens to your average person, corporations will fill it. Period. End of story. And the more you debilitate the ability of our government to react to these things, the more corporate power there'll be. And that's what this is about.
So I say vote third party, no matter what, no matter where you are. I don't care if you're in a swing state.
Wow, you're excited.
That's the perfect coda.
I've been sitting on that one for 40 minutes.
There you go. Honestly, I mean, there's so much at stake.
So I say vote third party.
There's so much at stake. And don't mistake what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that there. First of all, I don't know that there is a safe choice when we're talking about elections. But understand that the functioning of government is far beyond just like, I like this person or I don't like that person, I'm going to run for them. And the vast majority of your fellow Americans will not have access to this information, probably don't care about the information. And then a significant portion of them will also specifically not care. Like, I'm sort of aware of what you're saying, and I definitely don't care. I had a conversation with a guy who I like, and plumber. We were talking about the immigration stuff. What?
Wasn't Joe?
No, not Joe. But
hi, Joe.
But
how does it feel to not be a thing anymore since 2008?
And just the perception of like, there's a certain amount of just sort of like, I'm going to come up with a very simple catch-all answer so that I don't have to get into the nuance of some of this stuff. And resist that, folks. Understand, it's a massive government because we have 300 million people in this country. Fairly diverse country. Both in terms of like geography, psychology, demographics, and to provide for it is a complicated task. And they are dismantling our agencies. And I know it's technocratic and whatnot, but at the end of the day, this is the way that whatever services or ever policies that want to be pursued by whichever of your favored candidates want, this is the way that those things are going to be delivered. And if they're delivered improperly, it's also going to hurt the political agenda. People aren't judged just on the ideas. They're judged on the ability to deliver on those ideas. And between the courts and the agencies, it doesn't matter who you have as president. It's massive obstacles to actually delivering, even if, never mind the politics behind it. Even if you could deliver from a political standpoint and pass the perfect piece of legislation, carrying them out with agencies that have been completely decimated in terms of skills and a legal system that prohibits. I mean, the best part of Obamacare was the Medicaid expansion, and 1 million some odd, 2 million people didn't have access to it simply because the court decided some batshit crazy ruling that even though Congress could end Medicaid tomorrow and then restart Medicaid with the expanded version of Medicaid, they could not say, if you're going to take Medicaid, state, you need to expand it. But this court is willing to do what it takes to thwart any type of progress. And so these are important considerations. Folks, just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show, and as a way of saying thank you, we give you extra content virtually every single day. Also, go to justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Don't forget to check our AM Quickie. Gives you some of the top headlines first thing in the morning. And reminder, we're still waiting to find out what the DNA of Kelly's dog, Edie, is. Not just to find out what kind of breed the dog is, but also to give Kelly a heads up that the dog may be susceptible to certain diseases that she's got to keep an eye on going forward. You can discover your dog more than fur deep with the most accurate dog DNA test kit on the market. Right now, for our listeners, Embark has an exclusive summer offer you can't get anywhere else. Go to embarkvet.com, E-M-Bark, as in roof.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Somebody needed to do it.
I couldn't help myself. I kept reading Embark and thinking, embarkvet.com. Use the promo code majority. Save 15% off your dog DNA test kit. Discover your dog more than fur deep. Visit embarkvet.com. Use the promo code majority to save. Also, I think would make a really good gift, actually. People love their dogs.
Oh, yeah. Dogs are the best. I wish I could have a dog.
Me too. My kids want to get a...
Why don't you get them a dog?
Because
why
don't you get a dog?
Why don't you get a dog? Because don't have enough time.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Imagine your life. Imagine life. You had to take care of 3 dogs.
And then there's more things.
The dog, and then the other 2.
The other 2 dogs.
The other 2 dogs that walk around on 2 legs. But they want to get... Saul desperately wants what is known as a teacup dog.
What is a teacup
Or
dog?
a teacup kitty. Have you heard of this?
A tiny one.
They're the size, like you can fit them in your hand.
That is so weird.
They're like the size of like a gerbil.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger.
That's weird. That's too small for a dog.
Saul came up to me and goes, "Can we get a teacup dog? It costs only $2,000. I was like,
look at the Brooklyn
no.
schedule.
But that a teacup dog would be something I would become close to be able to do.
I mean, they still need to go to the bathroom just as
Yeah,
often.
but if I bring a teacup dog into here, the thing would run around and think it's outside.
Yeah, it's real breezy in here today.
It's like a louder cat.
Well, it's hot outside too. Can you? I mean, better in here than outside. Anyways, check out embarkvet.com. Use the promo code majority to save. Then I can find out if my teacup.
Oh,
that light went out.
This went out.
It just burnt out again. Yeah. All right. Take a quick break.
Tomorrow night, Crystal Ball. Joshua Kahn is back. We're going to do another lesson on the tactics of organizing, and then we're going to have, I believe we're going to have a Hawaiian activist call us from Hawaii about that action that's taking place there. A lot of focus as well as on Puerto Rico. This morning I was on Crystal Ball's Hill Show, if you want to check that out. And for people who subscribe on iTunes, we are now doing little snippets of the illicit history shows. And the snippet that dropped today was on our guest Ahmed Cabello on the Sudanese Marxist tradition and what's happening in the Sudan right now. Patreon.com/TMBS, Michael Brooks Show on YouTube.
Jamie.
This week
the Antifada.
There we go.
This week on the Antifada, I was out of town last weekend, so Sean and Andy held it down with Prank Stallone, a.k.a. Chris James, who you may know as the man who prank called
that's
Sebastian
really annoying that Chris
Gorka.
James went on your show before I got him on Majority Report.
Sorry about that. They talked about screwing with right-wing blowhards on the phone and, you know, the art of pranking. They also talked about a number of topics in the news, including critical mass, bike protests, the RNC in 2004, the insane Jeffrey Epstein affair, and the escalating insanity of the migrant crisis and the struggle against it. And I was especially impressed with what they had to say about that. So check it out. Oh, also, I should say, I'm very excited about this. I just recorded an episode over the weekend with 2 of the 3 authors of Feminism for the 99%, a manifesto. Those people being Tithi Bhattacharya, who's been on this show before, and Cinzia Arruzza. And, you know, feminism is a topic.
Cinzia Arruzza.
Yeah.
Really?
Did I pronounce it right?
That's an awesome name.
Yeah, she's
I have
cool.
no idea, but that definitely invites that kind of
Yeah,
pronunciation.
she's from Italy.
Okay.
And they're both super smart, and I love them so much, and I'm so excited to release it on Wednesday.
A literary hangover. We got one of the Leatherstocking Tales by James Fenimore Cooper coming up, but it's not The Last of the Mohicans. It's actually one that's better than that. It's where James Fenimore Cooper basically rewrites his father's founding of Cooperstown in central New York, but does it without any mention of elections, which were actually a pretty big part of life for the elites there. Also, just to mention the Orwell thing, it's kind of apposite. For patrons, I'm doing an Orweller series, so you might want to check that on patreon.com/literary hangover. But George Orwell went to Spain, fought in the Spanish Civil War, got shot in the throat by a fascist, and put on a list by Stalinists for possibly execution. And he came back not saying, hey, man, vote third party, but he said there's hardly a war where it doesn't matter who wins. So I think that's an important lesson.
Indeed.
Listen to Orwell.
All right, folks, quick break. Fun half. See you there. left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1 half. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy!
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey Sam, hey Andy, you guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
I think I might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
Do.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Oh, really? Is there video? Is there news report? Yeah. We are back. Sam Seder. It is the fun half, ladies and gentlemen. We will endeavor to take your phone calls, as we often do. Why don't we start right out? First into the gate. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. It's John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. All right. So yesterday, YouGov poll came out of Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, and they had good results for Bernie. He finished second to Biden in all 3 states, which is an improvement in recent polls in Iowa and New Hampshire. I was somewhat disheartened by the question that was asked in the poll that stated, right now, which would better help make your decision when to support for the Democratic nomination. Hearing the candidates talk about how they differ from each other received 41%, and 59% said how they would run their campaign against Donald Trump. And if you look at the question, who could beat Trump, 75% of Democratic primary voters think Biden would probably win against Trump, where only 50 of Sanders supporters would probably win, 46 with Harris and 45 with Warren. Even with Biden's bad performance in the debate, initially his numbers dropped, but then they rose again, not to the level they were at before, but they were still. He's still in the lead in most states and is dominant in the South. It seems like no matter how bad of a candidate Biden is, they still support him. which they think because they think he has the best chance to beat Trump. We've been talking about this issue for many months, and at first we were in agreement. Then you said voters weren't going to change their minds about electability issue, which is holding up. But we have.
Wait, I did not say that. But go ahead, John.
Well, I thought you did because before we were saying that they should drive people away from that. Then you said people aren't going to change; they're going to continue to have this this idea in their mind about electability.
I think to a certain extent. I mean, my sense at the beginning of the race was from the perspective of wanting people on the left to win, that talking about electability is not going to be that helpful because obviously Joe Biden would be on a superficial level. It's completely understandable why the majority of voters would, at least before they watch him campaign again, assume he's electable because he's won. He was on a presidential ticket. I don't know that you're going to get people to not think that way. Not specifically that it's Joe Biden, but I don't think you're going to get people to not worry about electability, particularly in this environment. My point was that I think all of them more or less are electable. Although I have to say that the more I get reminded of Joe Biden's campaign skills, he like I think he's got the biggest question mark in my mind. But go ahead.
All right. So yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, and what you're saying is actually holding up. But I mean, you and many others on the left are making a somewhat counterfactual argument with Biden. He's a bad candidate who won't enthuse youth voters, which is similar to what happened to Clinton in 2016. And you may be right about that assessment, but I think other candidates should address the fact that head-to-head versus Trump, this early is unreliable. And because, I mean, it just seems like no matter what they say, as long as people keep thinking in their heads that Biden's the best chance to beat Trump, I mean that's what they're going to go with.
But
I mean,
here's the bottom line. This is true in a lot of things. There is no point in telling people as much in terms of the candidates as it is showing. You can say like there's no way to measure this right now, but people are going to be like, well, then how am I supposed to vote? If 60% of the people are saying the most important question is how you're going to beat Trump, and then you come around to say like, guess what? All of the roadmaps that you think you have to tell you how you're going to beat Trump are, useless. Well, you're just leaving them adrift, and people don't like to be led adrift. The way to make the case that Biden is the way you make the case that Biden's not electable is you show people, and you show people by like what Harris did. Frankly, like, look, he can't answer anything, and every time he gets a question, he's showing his inability to change with the times. Like, I mean, I think that Biden could get away with everything that he did as a senator if he showed at least an awareness that things have changed. The problem with Biden is every time they say like, hey man, you shouldn't be, like, why are you, it's one thing to say, hey, 30 years ago, I had to deal with segregationists to get stuff done. And I may have liked them on a personal level, but they were really bad people in terms of what they were doing publicly. But that's the way it was in the Senate. And do I regret it? No, because that's what I needed to do to get things done. But times have changed. Like, that's all he had to say. The idea that he can't even contemplate that is a problem. Same with like, oh, bless me, Father, I've sinned. I hugged one woman too much or whatever it is. Come on. Like, the more that's on display, I think the more people get the idea of like, wait a second, this isn't going to work. And I think that's what's going to happen. Yeah. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right. And, it did happen a little bit. But, I mean, now, like I said, Biden has gone up. And in the South, I mean, he's dominating. There's more polls coming out in the South, and he's dominating everywhere.
Like African Americans.
Let me just say, I think Biden is, unfortunately, I think he's pretty resilient. I think that even some of the really substantive things, it's not necessarily going to knock him off at all with normal voters. And I just think that the best thing, I keep saying it, I really think the most salient thing is something like trade. Trade and the bankruptcy bill should be all we hear about on Biden. And I think those things could crack through. And it's
not
I'm expecting to see what?
Not in this debate.
Why not in this?
Well,
debate?
he's not on the stage with anybody who's going to make those cases.
I'm talking campaign ads. I'm talking everything.
Right. I think like
which one is who's he with? Which one is?
He's just with Harris and.
So that's interesting because they can't have like the replay of the same thing. But honestly, I think those two issues are the really broad issues that can speak across to a lot of people that can have some salience with him.
Okay, we were also talking about voters who switch candidates, and you mentioned many times according to the Morning Consult poll, Sanders' voters' second choice was Biden. I said I was skeptical of that aspect of the poll because electability was also important to some Bernie voters. Now I have some data to support my theory that that they surveyed voters in June and July, after the debate. 69% of Sanders voters stayed with him. 10% went to Warren. 10% went to other, candidates in the top four. 7% went to Biden, and 5% went to Harris. And so, I think that.
Wait, why does that show that the remaining Bernie supporters, their second candidate is not Biden?
Well, because their second candidate is Warren.
No. That's if they abandon. You said if they abandon Bernie. I'm saying in the absence of Bernie in the race, they would go, the plurality anyway, would go to Biden.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's not what it says. This is the first time I've seen something like that to where people actually change their vote.
Yeah, but changing their vote is not the same as saying they're their second choice. Now they're their first choice. My point is that I was pointing that out to argue that they were not driven by ideology, because it would be inconsistent to have Bernie first and Biden second. Not saying all the voters, but in terms of like, and that what you've just told me does not refute the idea that their second choice is Biden. There's no reason for them to abandon Bernie because he's still in the race. The ones that you're talking about are people who were soft supporters of Bernie's.
That's true, but Biden didn't lose that many voters either. He kept 70% of his voters.
Yes, but that's not relevant to what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what happens when one of them leaves the race.
You should go on the Right Wing Mandela Show and dunk on and own him. Peter Beinart.
Yeah.
So they, YouGov also put out their second iteration of their delegate projection.
Yeah, I saw this in CBS. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just it also shows what has been happening since the first debate rather, is that everything's getting closer. So Biden right now has the projections of 39% of all delegates in the early states, with Warren winning 29 and Sanders winning 17 and Harris at 12.
Yeah.
So I think that this whole idea of a brokered convention is very much, could very much be in play.
Yep.
And, Bernie has said himself that he expects a brokered convention.
Yep.
He doesn't expect the candidate to get 50%. And at that point, it's really a matter of, if Warren and Sanders and Harris can convince their delegates to get behind, one candidate, they can take Biden out.
Well, as I'm looking at this now, right? I guess it's pretty close. Just in July, the delegate estimates. Now, this is just the estimates for the first 40% of the races, too, right? So, you've got to.
I don't even think it's 40%.
Yeah, it says
it's close to, it's close.
these contests account for an estimated 1,494 delegates, or 40% of all pledged delegates to the Democratic Convention next summer. So it's about 40%. It goes to basically Super Tuesday, more or less, based on those polls.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, again, this is... there's a lot of hypotheticals here, but it has Bernie... It has Warren at 430 delegates, Bernie at 250 approximately. So that's 680. If you combine Biden and Harris, they have closer to 750, whatever. I mean, it could work in any number of different ways, but I think the point remains that the chances of a brokered convention are significant. Let's put it that way. Appreciate the call, John.
Okay. Can I mention one last thing?
Quick.
Yeah. Okay. You kept mentioning this paper that said 50% of voters don't know that the Democratic Party represented a majority of black voters until Obama was elected. I find that hard to believe.
No, it was from. Listen, it was from the book Identity Crisis. The statistic is 50% of non-college educated white people thought the Republican Party was to the left of Democrats.
Okay, who's the author?
Come on. Identity Crisis. There's
Get
three authors.
the author.
Come on,
Do
John.
your job, Sam, you lazy bastard.
It's not enough. I had him
go
on and
around
interview
all
him.
day
Come on,
with
John.
questionable statistics,
Appreciate
distracting
the
John,
call.
and now you don't even remember the name of the author.
It's John Sides.
John Sides, John. Thank you. We
All right.
apologize for
Thank you,
Sam
John.
for not having that information handy. Pathetic. Pathetic.
You're like I'm a personal research service for him.
You're also a personal
John
deliverer.
spends a lot of time researching stuff, and he can't look that up.
You're a personal deliverer of bad polls that John has to correct in real time, and you don't even know the authors that you cite name.
All right, let's take one more call. Calling from a 702 area code. Who's this?
You
Where you
hate
calling
to
from?
see it.
Where you calling from?
Hey, what's up? This is Jay. This is Jay from Las Vegas.
Jay from Las Vegas. What's on your mind, Jay?
I'm trying to stomach CNN yesterday. They had their headline was Democrats use racism too much, the old trope. They ran with that like forever. It comes up on the Tom Hartman program earlier this morning, right? He's talking about reframing and how the Republicans are reframing everything in the culture war and they're winning. He gets a troll caller who is an angry white guy, Republican. I'm sorry, I'm white, but we're all white people here, but we know who we're up against. We're up against angry white divorced guys. So this dude calls into Tom Hartman, and he's reframing. He must have got this from like a Republican think tank or from 4chan or something.
Fuck you. I had to divorce Winnie, and I'm a patriot.
Go ahead.
He's reframing the truth. No, it's fine. Let Michael go. It's fine. No, he's reframing.
Thank you, sir.
He's reframing the Trump tweets. He says, "Oh, they were lazy and poorly researched because some of those women were born in America, but they weren't racist, and you guys are throwing it around too much." Like, that's the degree of reframing we're dealing with here. And again, he probably got that from 4chan or Gab or.
Well, I would just add
where he
that,
picked
like,
that up on.
why is there a presumption that they weren't born in this country?
Oh, gee, I wonder why. Maybe you could put two and two together,
Well,
Jew
but
boy.
That's my
Why
point.
don't you use that patented
That's not
Jew
a great
brain of yours?
reframe. That's not a great reframe that it falls apart on like sort of the most basic of. But yes, of course. Look, listen. But here's the point. These things are reframed not for the sake of anybody but their own people. It's just like the burden of like having to sort of deny their own racism is difficult.
I was ready to roam. Sorry, Winnie.
And
they walk backwards through the sand. To their point.
Yes, I'm not sure I know what that means.
I don't
but it sounds good.
understand the metaphor.
But also, hashtag not all angry divorced
Can we go
white
into the
guys.
future?
What's that? Yeah, exactly. What's that? Can we what?
Let's go. Can we go into the future? There's a rumor that the Apprentice, Donald Trump's Apprentice tape, where he says the N-word over and over on an Apprentice tape. There's an internet rumor that the Trump war room is keeping that in their back pocket, and they're going to drop it closer to Election Day so that it's fresh on everybody's minds when they go into the voting booth, right? How are they going to reframe that? Because they're going to, and they're going to do, they're going to do it. They're going to reframe that.
Well, I mean, I think at this point, like, I'm not sure that I don't know that it would make a difference.
What I was trying to say earlier, though, that I think is really important to keep reiterating in all of this, that while there might be plenty of people that are not up to like the standards of various, Twitter norms or whatever, a lot of normal people don't actually approve of this. People that are not the base of the Republican Party, including people that might have moderate or even center-right views on certain things, are actually not cool with it. So if that dropped, that would mobilize his base. It would certainly mobilize the Democratic base, and it would be off-putting to a handful of normal people. And I think that is really important to reiterate when it's as blatant as this.
Yeah.
As blatant
the blatancy is the problem.
I can't find the stat.
I appreciate the call.
But to reiterate Michael's point, like the idea that, first of all, the left isn't losing the culture war. The left is winning the culture war. It's losing the institutional power war.
Right.
Like all these, and when you ask generally, like people might have problems with like, buzzwords or even pronouns, which I shouldn't have a problem with, things like that, right? If you ask them on a poll. But generally, if you ask them things like, have black people been oppressed in this country? Like they all agree, and those trends are going in the right direction.
And those trends are going in the right direction. And even that poll that showed that a lot of Americans don't like quote unquote political correctness, if you look at what they meant by it, besides the Republican bloc, was the scolding and the annoying stuff. They didn't mean the merits. And the second thing that they hated that came in second right after political correctness was hate speech, which partially shows you that people are incoherent, but it also shows you that, like, pick your lane to fight on. And this is one you can absolutely pick the fight on. I do think most people at the end of the day would pick AOC or Ilhan Omar over Donald Trump.
I think that's
I have to believe that. If you don't believe that, then we're done.
The problem is this, is that most people, the percentage of people who know AOC or Ilhan Omar, most of them, or the majority, are in the Republican Party and have know them through the frame that they've gotten from Fox News.
Well, and that's also institutional failure of the Democratic Party as well, because they know them through the Republican Party and then through the Democrats. Because what is the message when they don't get defended? If Nancy Pelosi came out from day one and even said, we have different policy positions, but she's absolutely not an anti-Semite, and I 100% have her back, there wouldn't be any gray area.
I would agree with that. But I will also add that, like, the Democrats have dropped the ball on this, no doubt, right? I mean, and they dropped the ball on this before this even happened. They dropped the ball on it just when they stepped on their own messaging for HR 1 with the Ilhan Omar. But we also have to recognize that they don't have the second largest cable news outlet to sit there and pump this stuff out in that way.
That's also true. But again, I mean, good time to interrogate MSNBC, frankly.
Well, I mean, they're just not.
And MSNBC is not that.
Right.
We know
they're just not that, and they're not going to be.
But there's a lot of well, that's another one. Right. And in that case, we just need to clarify that they're not that. I still think in the public imagination, there's a lot of notions that they are that, in fact, and that's also a big problem.
I think so. I think that's probably true.
You talk to I've talked to so many normal people who will say, like, they might understand that it's not quite as relentless as Fox, but they do think it's analogous.
Yes, they do. That's what makes it even worse.
Right.
Because they actually do think it's that, and it's not that, and it doesn't serve to do those things.
Bill Kristol is not going to have Ilhan Omar's back. And he's not going to apologize.
I think he's on CNN now, though, to be fair.
Oh, he's on CNN
but
now?
I don't know.
I think he's on MSNBC.
I don't know. I don't follow it that much. Speaking of, sometimes you got to just rely on some of those Fox News guys. Here is, oh, wait, what's this? Oh.
Pretty nuts story about the blackout yesterday.
Okay, so there was a blackout, and where it was in
Canarsie.
In Canarsie. It's a part of Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, yeah.
And I'm just telling this to people who are not from New York. And so we had a blackout in New York like a week ago, right? And it was in Manhattan, I believe. I'm not sure which part now.
It was in Midtown, right?
Midtown.
Shut it down.
Wasn't it?
That's what you get, Midtown.
Maybe it was Upper West. But
definitely
the
Midtown,
point
I
being, this was not, I think this was not a controlled situation. Con Ed did not know what was going on. And so they clearly have been on their toes to try and make sure that they not subjected to a surprise blackout, particularly with this heat wave coming. Everybody's got their air conditioning on, whatnot. Understand what happens when there's a blackout. People are trapped in the subways for extended periods of time. I mean, it's awful, awful. And so it appears that Con Edison, as a way of avoiding a blackout in a place like Midtown Manhattan, or the Upper West Side, or the Upper East Side for that matter, or really anywhere in Manhattan, or in specific places in Brooklyn that might have more money, specifically more political power. You wouldn't want that to happen. So maybe how can we save some of our kilowatts so that it doesn't happen in an area where we could get in real trouble for it?
So now what we're hearing is that Con Edison purposely turned off the lights in this neighborhood to prevent a bigger outage. What do you guys think about that?
Why this neighborhood?
Oh, really?
I didn't even know that.
What do you think about that?
That's crazy if that's the case. So what? We are not important enough? Like, we're supposed to sit in the dark while you what? Survey. Who is going to be protected? Who they're protecting? What about us? So you're making us suffer to preserve who? Who are they preserving? So why? We're not important? I'm trying to understand this. I'm so confused. This is news to me.
Period.
So exactly
Hold on, pause it. She understands it. She understands it. Continue.
I'm trying to understand this. I'm so confused. This is news to me. So exactly what are they looking to accomplish? So we need to suffer so that you could do what? Preserve who? What about the preservation of us?
Yeah.
You'll see a lot more of that.
Yeah, this just shows how, class struggle, anti-racist struggle, energy justice, and, the fight against climate change all go hand in hand. And they have to if we're going to do anything about it.
What we say was that by the time the Republicans and the right, quote unquote, accepts the science, which is a terrible frame in my opinion, it will be it will be policies like that at a macro scale.
Efficiency.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a long history of the government doing this too. Like, the reason I spoke to Anna Merlin about this, like the reason that some people thought that the government flooded black neighborhoods on purpose during Hurricane Katrina is because they actually did that decades beforehand to save white neighborhoods.
Right. There you go. Back on the racist beat, Stephen Miller, who one of those bugs, he and Mick Mulvaney seem to be the sort of the cockroaches in this administration, and they bring Stephen Miller out. His project is very much, I think, grounded in white nationalism. They bring him out apparently to speak to the masses. I also think that they're going like, who better than to bring out our fascistic Jew in the administration to go out and leverage anti-Semitism and also deliver for the white supremacists? Like, there's nobody can do it better. He can speak to both.
You are the president's senior policy advisor and his chief speechwriter. His tweets this week about those 4 congresswomen, and let's put them up. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came, are the latest in a long string of controversial comments by Mr. Trump, some of which I know that you helped draft. Here are a few.
I want him to show his birth certificate. There's something on that birth certificate that he doesn't like. They're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. You had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly.
Why shouldn't someone see all of that as racist?
I think the term racist, Chris, has become a label that is too often deployed by the left, Democrats in this country, simply to try to silence and punish and suppress people they disagree with, speech that they don't want to hear. The reality is that this president has been a president for all Americans.
There you go. There it is, taking a page out of the IDW.
It's the same as the Sam Harris playbook, where it's like, because that word racist comes into it, all of a sudden we can't continue the conversation. Why not?
That's right.
Yeah. And when he says all Americans, that's also a dog whistle because he considers certain people to be more American than others.
And what is it exactly, like, what would they continue to say? Like, the charge is that it's racist. And if you use that charge, there's no way for me to explain that telling these women of color to go back where they came from and assuming that they're from a different country and they're not American. Like,
they want to lead people on a scenic route to reach racist conclusions without it being termed racist. And the term racism really gives people a shortcut into where they're going with stuff that lets anybody identify it.
You know, here's the problem with that term racism. It forgets that the journey is part of the destination. And you're not able to enjoy all the good sort of like...
Come on the nuanced journey with us.
Exactly. Let's build this wall of white supremacy, one tiny brick at a time. And if you just jumpstart the whole process and get to 12 feet high on the get-go, it's just no fun. Here he is. He continues on as on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace.
It's impossible to read the quote that way. The quote, what she's trying to say is there's a debate.
He said, this idea of 10% better from garbage shouldn't be what we settled for.
No,
she's talking about her proposal.
It's
all right, pause it. Okay,
impossible.
what they're talking about is Donald Trump's gone on there and said that she's calling the country a garbage place. And in fact, go back a little bit. Can you go back a little bit earlier so we can actually hear the quote from AOC? AOC is basically saying we need to have proposals that address the problems, not garbage proposals that just help things 10%, is basically what it is. And Chris Wallace is saying, like, how can you possibly interpret that as saying that the country is garbage? Now, this stuff is so... the bottom line is they win when it gets this granular. When it becomes like, wait a second, if you move the comma over here and you move it like... First off, she's not calling the country garbage. Second off, so what if she is? Does that justify telling her to go back to where she came from and fix it, like as if it's a different country? She comes from the Bronx.
It's impossible to read the quote that way. The quote, what she's trying to say is there's a debate.
He said, this idea of 10% better from garbage shouldn't be what we settled for.
No,
she's talking about her proposal.
No, it's literally impossible to read the quote that way. What she's saying is there's a debate in the Democratic Party in which some people want to improve, in her mind, 10% from garbage, which maybe we'll say is Obamacare, where she wants to do, say, Medicare for all, which she views as being, I guess, 70% better than garbage. Her point is, we're starting at garbage, some want to go a little better than garbage,
I understand
and she
that.
wants to go way better than garbage.
But she's talking about policy.
No, she's saying her starting point...
She's not talking about the country and the people.
She's saying...
Is garbage such a horrible word?
She's saying that America, in her view, right now, is garbage. But more...
Well, no. Then I want to put something up on that regard, because I want to put up a tweet from Donald Trump from 2014. He wrote, "The United States under President Obama has truly become the gang that couldn't shoot straight. Everything he touches turns to garbage." Stephen, that isn't AOC. That's Donald J. Trump.
Throughout this interview, Chris, you're continuing to conflate Donald Trump's criticisms of President Obama versus AOC's deep and systemic criticisms of the country itself. And so, let me just cut to the heart of the issue. These four congresswomen detest America as it exists, as it is currently constructed. They want to tear down the structure of our country. They want it to be a socialist, open borders country. If you, as Donald Trump says, want to destroy America with open borders, you cannot say you love your country.
So understand, he's not out there to defend Donald Trump in this. That last segment right there, every time he keeps going back to the original point is, he's saying these four represent the browning of America. That's what he's saying. When he says they're for open borders and socialism, what he is saying is they are for diminishing the white nature of this country. And white is bound up with a whole bunch of other values that existed, or we told ourselves existed, when white people's power in society was completely unchallenged. Completely unchallenged. And in fact, not only completely unchallenged, but celebrated. And that's what they're doing here. He's not going on and defending Donald Trump. Understand this. This is the double down on the double down. And they're just going to keep doing this. Some days they'll do it. They'll do it a little. They'll say the quiet parts a little bit quieter. Sometimes they'll say the quiet parts a little bit louder. But this is what we're going to have for the next 12 months, 13 months, 14 months. Jesus, 15 months, 16 months, 16 months.
16 months. Okay, stop.
15 and a half months.
All right, that's a wrap.
If we're lucky.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 510 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sam, ain't no watch on your wrist, but you know what time it is, man. You know who I am. You know why I'm here.
I don't.
Yo, I don't. I do.
It's Cole James Cash. Sam, let me just say something, Sam.
Yeah.
You know, Ben Burgess, he went on my show an hour after he was on your show, man.
Okay.
From the heartland of America to the trap house of the Ghetto News Network, man. Let me tell you something about Ben, man. Just because he got a gut don't mean he ain't hungry, man. He out here. All right? My man Ben, let me tell you something about Ben. Now, he just moved to Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. On the low, I'm like, yo, I know you married, but you got to go to Magic City and see the logic of that booty.
Wait a second.
I'm not married, and I will.
Wait, what is the Magic City of that booty? What?
Magic City is a very famous gentleman's club in Atlanta.
In Atlanta?
To Atlanta.
Oh, you know, I'm coming to Atlanta for the DSA convention.
No, we're not talking about the DSA convention.
Jamie.
Yeah.
No, don't do this.
Can
Jamie.
I
Don't
see
do
the
this.
magic of the booty?
Absolutely, yes. Stay on topic. You good? Yeah, Magic City. Okay, if you want to take some DSA comrades to that, it's good. Magic City, man. That's where all the magic is happening. That's why I would love.
Wait, are you from Atlanta, or are you just taking a tour?
He's a cosmopolitan.
Okay.
But the reason why I'm calling, Sam, is tomorrow, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I will be going on the Jesse Lee Peterson show.
Is that right?
Yes. How great is that?
Oh my God!
Yes.
Ghetto News
Jesse
Network.
Lee Peterson decided he wanted to go one-on-one with Christ himself. I don't blame him. You know what I'm saying? I need to save him. You know what I'm saying? I need to save him. And you know, I will be there. Like I said, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You know, I'm going cone hunting, boy.
Well,
that's what it is.
Jesus. Well, just promise me when he asks you if you know who the Great White Hope is, you say my name.
Wait, no.
Actually,
no.
Who?
Say my name.
Not Sam's name. I think you know what name to say.
Michael's upset that he didn't think of that first.
Yes,
but
I'm agreeing.
When you think of it second,
I'm very agreeing.
When you think of it second, you need to come in
I
second.
thought of it first. No, that was a killer joke. God damn it, I resent
Now, let me tell y'all something. I can't give away my game plan.
I
But
understand.
I promise you might actually make a segment out of my appearance there, because every loaded question he got, I got loaded answers if you know me. You know what I'm saying?
I have a feeling I understand what you're saying. Yes. Well,
this is gonna be so.
We will
you know
look forward to it, and we will
when
definitely.
he's done, Jesse's gonna join.
Is this
going
gonna
to
be live?
Black Panthers.
Is it going to be live?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I'm gonna be in studio. Shout out to Echoplex Media, man. I'm going to their studio in Campbell. It's very nice. I went there last week, man. They got a nice studio. I'm going all out. I'm wearing a hentai-themed sweater just because I want to. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
Yeah, it's gonna be that shit show. Like I said, I can't give away what I'm gonna say.
Right.
To his white supremacist daddy, John Tanton, who was funding not only him but also the ADOS movement. Oh, we gonna get into that. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, like I said,
Wait a second. You cut out for a second. You're saying that the person who funds Jesse Lee Peterson is also funding the ADOS movement?
Yes. Yeah. Well, the founder of, I forgot what I don't have my notes in front of me, but the founder of that organization he has called like Choose Black America or some shit is also the founder of the same ADOS movement that Yvette Carnell is a part of. But they're astroturfed by this dude John Tanton, who's resting in piss right now. By white supremacists, he's dead, and so that's what I'm saying. His white supremacist daddy's dead. You know what I'm saying? It's like Samuel Jackson when his slave master died in Django. You feel me?
Yeah, I don't remember the movie, but
yes, that's exactly it. That's it.
We got a call. We got a call on Friday.
By the way, can I just say I had to restrain Sam from saying all of this when he was on Jesse's show. Jesse's like,
to be honest with you,
dead.
I had no
it's like
idea.
Django.
What is the purpose of the hentai?
Because I like hentai. What the fuck?
Oh, fair enough. I thought there might be some like tactical or strategic reason why you were wearing that.
Keep it simple.
And also, the sweater is designed by my buddy Pink Maggot Cat. So I'm promoting one of my sex worker friends while I'm on his show. I'm covering all the bases. You feel me?
Yeah,
you
got.
Let me tell you something.
I feel like you really.
Now, see, let me tell y'all
you
something.
prep for this in a way that I probably should have, but I.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna put it to you like this.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I understand people be like, oh yeah, neck beards and hentai. Bro, I'm not no neck beard. I'll slap the shit out you. You got something to say about it. But yeah, guys, nice talking to you guys. Jamie, I'm going to get you back, and I'll holler at y'all later.
All right.
Check
Good
you
luck.
out tomorrow.
Good
8
luck.
p.m. All right. Bye.
Right.
Godspeed.
Did you say 8 a.m. or 8 p.m.?
8 a.m.
Okay, good. So we're going to come into the office tomorrow. Be able to watch.
You're running like a beta male. Are you a beta male? Beta!
For those not in the know, by the way, hentai is tentacle porn.
No, hentai is anime porn.
And it could be tentacle, though.
Right.
I thought it's often both. Never mind.
I'm so out of my league with this stuff.
Yeah, I guess I got to issue a correction on that. Not necessarily tentacle involved.
Forget what the tentacle is specific.
Let's watch this. Apropos of our point about MSNBC not being the sort of the equivalent of Fox in terms of the defining of people on the right. I don't even know that this really even fits into that assessment of MSNBC, but. And, I think people know, full disclosure, that I am a contributor at MSNBC. I'm not a full-time contributor, as it were. I'm sort of on an ad hoc basis, but I am under contract. And stuff like this is, and I don't watch it particularly much. I've done this show with David Gura. It's the latest iteration of Up, which started first by Hayes, and then I think Kornacki had it, and Gura. And Gura seems like a perfectly fine person. I don't know this commentator, but this is embarrassing. Like, I mean, I can see... I feel like, we have guests like this on this show, but they're not there as analysts of any sort. And to say something like this is a very weird thing to say, I think. But this is Mimi Rocha. She is an NBC legal analyst.
I think, having Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren next to each other will really highlight, because for me, as again, I'm not the political analyst here, but just as a woman, probably considered a somewhat moderate Democrat, Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl, and I can't even identify for you what exactly it is, but I see him as sort of a not pro-woman candidate. And so having the two of them there, like, I don't understand young women who support him. And I'm hoping that having him next to her will help highlight that, because those are the people that if I were her, I would want to say, well, why are you supporting him and not me if you're going to choose between the two of us?
Do you have anything after that? Does anybody say anything like, that's a very weird analysis? Like, first off, let's just take it on, like, as if it wasn't grounded in just her own personal sort of like gut feeling. I can certainly, I can accept the argument that I want to see a woman to be president, that we have half the population of this country has received at least a subtextual message that women are not capable of being president, at least in the history of this country up to this point. I want to see a female president. I can also accept the notion of, I don't know if I would necessarily point to Elizabeth Warren particularly in terms of women's issues. I could see how she would be representative of certain feminist values. But I think there are probably other candidates who might be more oriented towards women's issues in particular in the Senate. But to say that Bernie Sanders is anti-women is, aside from, she says I'm not a political analyst, but it's just like factually incorrect. I don't think there's even a perception, broadly speaking, of that. Now, she says, like, I'm a moderate Democrat. But, can you imagine if someone said, I'm a moderate Democrat, and so Elizabeth Warren makes my skin crawl. There's just something about her that makes my skin crawl. Or if someone said, I'm to say that on television is stunning. But let's see if there's anybody who responded to it, because maybe, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to say it unchallenged.
Get your bets in now.
Not pro-woman candidate. And so having the two of them there, like, I don't understand young women who support him. And I'm hoping that having him next to her will help highlight that, because those are the people that if I were her, I would want to say, well, why are you supporting him and not me if you're going to choose between the two of us?
We'll leave it there. Come back in just a moment. Mike Memley, thank you.
All right.
Oh, my God.
I would also add that I would imagine Elizabeth Warren would say to that commentator, I've got news for you. We're more closely aligned than anybody else on this stage.
I noticed it. I should have tagged this. I didn't keep track of it over the weekend because I wasn't online as much. But there was a quick, ask a candidate a question while they're getting on a plane or something like that, and they asked Bernie, how's it going to be what is it going to be like when you and Warren are on stage together? And he just looked and he went, intelligent, and kind of smirked and walked off. And so, that's mostly been their dynamic together. To me, though, it's not just, obviously, I think it's totally disgusting and contemptible and just loathsome that woman would say that. And I think that there's, not only couldn't you say that about Warren, I don't think there's actually another candidate, period, that you get away with the sort of just baseless, casual contempt for. Right. But I want to bridge the fact that she talks about a lot of younger women with the fact that she doesn't just have baseless contempt for Sanders. She has baseless contempt for poor people and working people.
And young women.
Because, a lot of young women, not all, there's certainly young women who are quite well off and privileged but want to have fundamental change, which is why they support Bernie. But a lot of young women, they support Bernie because he is totally uncompromising on things like reproductive justice, but also because they're dealing with student loans and all of these other serious structural crises, which when someone like that talks, and that is why it's so offensive when you talk about Sanders that way, because to me, it's also you're coding on a total dismissal of the material crises of tens of millions of people.
I also don't think she knows Elizabeth Warren policies.
She doesn't care, but I think I would say in a smaller way, not knowing Elizabeth Warren's policies, frankly, the same contempt for working people.
Right.
It's all it's just my personal impression.
legal
Obviously,
animal.
I have an easy as hell life, so I don't need to know.
This is why we need and are developing in struggle a feminism for the 99%, because this narrow set of issues, this elite representation just doesn't cut it for the vast majority of women and people.
It would be nice if someone on the panel goes like, what women's issues are you exactly talking about?
Well, Mimi Roca has 247,000 followers on Twitter, but her account is protected as of right now, so I think she might have been hearing from social media.
Maybe she's seen the wrong end of the ratio. No, I mean, I should thank people like her, honestly, because, I was a little hesitant to throw my hat in the ring as a political commentator. Once upon a time, I was like, well, I am a woman and I am a leftist, so everyone's going to treat me like an idiot. But then I saw people like her, running her mouth off on television, getting paid to do it in the newspaper and the TV, and they know absolutely nothing, and I know more than they do. So then I was like, fuck it, why not?
Let's go to the phones here. Bear with me. Calling from a 478 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sam, it is with relative certainty. I believe my name is Jeff, and I reside in the state of Georgia. How are you today?
Jeff in Georgia. What's happening, Jeff?
Hey, man, it's great to talk to you. Great to talk to the whole jury report crew. Listen, just something serious on my mind. I'm real happy it came up on the show. Doesn't it come up on a lot of the Brooklyn-based political podcasts I listen to? Hentai is a perfectly mainstream form of pornography for a young person to get into, or a person of any age to get into, frankly. It's not all weird, tentacle-based, although certainly the tentacles do represent a large percentage of your hentai fan base. But nonetheless, Sam, I want you to know that, hentai lovers can be productive members of society. They can be good, upstanding individuals.
Well, I think we're seeing that. One of them is going on to Jesse Lee Peterson's show. That seems productive.
That's absolutely right. Can I just say real talk? Coach James Cash, if you listen to this, I want to say that's the baller-ass answer I've ever heard. What's up with your I just like it. What? I like what I like.
We're having a tough time hearing you, Jeff. Cutting in and out.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I was just complimenting Coach James Cash on his baller-ass answer to the question of hentai. He likes what he likes, folks. Like what you like, that's okay. It's okay to like things sometimes. I did want to make one quick point, seriously, about concentration camps. Fun topic. I know last week you were openly musing about, you wondered how much the German public knew about concentration camps being set up. And it's funny, I looked into this from my own show. It turns out the consensus used to be that they did not know much, but the consensus now is that that's not the case. Not only did people know these camps were being set up before the war began in 1933.
Jeff, you got to go back to whatever you were doing before in terms of hearing you.
I haven't moved, man. I'm so sorry. I haven't moved. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, I'm so sorry, Sam. I don't know where it cut off, but I wanted to make a point about German people during the age of the 30s when they were setting up concentration camps. The point is, not only was it not secret, these camps were publicized. Dachau was publicized in papers controlled by the Nazis as a model camp. Deaths were reported there very often. It is true that the larger German public did not know about the final solution. But generally speaking, any time a country has set up concentration camps, even when they've done it overseas, say in the Philippines or in the South Africa during the Boer War, the Second Boer War, news about these concentration camps did come back home. In some cases, it did cause a public backlash that led to some reforms in ending those camps, such as in Great Britain for the Second Boer War. But in some cases, public awareness was not the issue. People knew what was happening.
Jeff,
you know what's happening now? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and not that it's, I think the Holocaust kind of shows how flimsy the distinction is, but when they were advertising the camps, they were advertising them as concentration camps, right? And not death camps?
Yeah, that is true, I believe, yes.
Maybe it's
largely
work
speaking.
camps,
And then,
actually.
especially early on, they focused on political prisoners. I'm sorry.
Work camps.
Yeah, media is never going to be enough. Democracy dies in darkness. It also dies in broad daylight. We need power.
That's absolutely my point, Jamie. People knew what was happening, largely speaking. And it makes sense, right? You can't, imprison such a huge millions of people like this, right? And keep it secret for very long for that many people. It's just not possible.
Right.
Even with the technology that they had, enough people had to work in those camps. Anyway, sorry, that's not a super fun topic to call in about, but I appreciate you taking my call, man.
Appreciate the call.
You guys have a good one, okay?
Always a pleasure.
Martin Amis has a book, which I think is one of his better ones, called The Zone of Interest, which is the sort of dawning realization among people that, these are death camps. It's a very dark book.
Calling from a 206 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Emily from Brooklyn.
Hi, Emily. What's on your mind?
Hi, I wanted to ask you about something that you touched on in the first night of the Democratic debates.
Okay.
So the question that was put to the candidates was, in the case of genocide or crimes against humanity, do we have a responsibility to intervene to protect people threatened by their governments, even when these atrocities do not affect American core interests? And you said that you believe in American and international intervention if there is an imminent threat of genocide.
Correct.
And the question was, how do you determine the threat of genocide? And you said prior to the military intervention in Libya, the UN makes that determination. But then you got cut off before you could finish your train of thought of what your current thoughts on that were. So I was just curious to hear what you would have said.
Well, my sense is that how do you make that determination, right? And because obviously a country can make it unilaterally as some type of excuse for intervention. And the UN had done that in the case of Libya in regards to Benghazi.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, and I imagine it was by design, the Allied, or I should say the NATO forces, right, involved. France in particular, I think, was taking the lead on this. They overran the mandate. The mandate was to protect the citizens of Benghazi. And if that meant shooting down planes, you shot down planes. If that meant firing on rockets that were positioned to bomb Benghazi, then you do that. But they basically decided to blow through that and perform regime change. And so basically, Russia and China said, we're not doing this again. And now they destroyed the apparatus, in my mind, the nascent apparatus to make those type of determinations. And I think it's highly problematic. Because I think there are clearly times where this is going to happen and has happened. And I don't know now what the best way to, if there is a way to legitimately make this assessment and act upon it. I mean, it was beyond irresponsible. I mean, it was just, it's a horrific thing to attack the integrity of that type of institution. And it did, it destroyed it. I mean, and it's not the institution, right? It's not the UN that makes the decision. It is the UN is really just a disposition, represents a disposition that each country has. And that it is a moment where they come together and they say, we're willing to give up part of our sovereignty, some small measure, to act as a group and prevent some of the most heinous things that can happen amongst humanity. And that was sacrificed. We sacrificed it. The Europeans sacrificed it. I mean, it was sacrificed for everybody, but it was on our impetus by extending that mandate, blowing through it, and doing regime change. And so now I don't know how you make the determination. Maybe the UN can come back together. It just won't do it in as extreme circumstances. You know, like in the intensity of a civil war, I would imagine. There may be opportunities for this for the UN in the future to say, but it's hard for me to imagine now what it would be. It would have to be a country where there's absolutely no interests, right? No resource interests by outside.
I mean, I do think though that that's a problem even when you have a more robust system is a country where there's no resource interests, right? Like that whole process has never really worked. I mean, you go in the Iran-Iraq war in the 80s, which was one of the most vicious things people have ever seen, right? Like chemical weapons are being used. A massive amount of people died. Every single member of the UN Security Council sold weapons to both sides of the conflict while it was happening.
Right.
So I think that, some of the things that are interesting to me is someone like Daniel Bessner, who's looking at reframing the questions of international relations in terms of like the foundational questions we asked about what it is a nation state's job to do and what is the international community's job to do, but what the international community even is getting reset right now. And we can't, I guess it's you can't idolize a system that didn't work either.
Well, it's not a question of idealizing. It's like it's hard to come up with another, idea of how you do that. I mean, because if we leave it to the unilateral perspective of a superpower to determine when there is an imminent threat, inevitably you're going to get more problems like that. And the idea with having competing interests sitting down at the table and all signing off on an assessment that this is one of those occasions where you are looking at a genocide, essentially, of civilian, or, maybe genocide's a mass slaughter of civilians, potentially hundreds of thousands killed within days. I don't think you can have a perfect apparatus, but it would be good to have an apparatus. And I don't know if that exists anymore because of that, but appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye. This is like the only type of call you get from like someone from like Australia or Canada, I feel like.
Well, she said she was from Brooklyn. Or in Brooklyn.
She was from Brooklyn, but
Yeah,
clearly
she wasn't from Brooklyn.
from Australia or maybe New Zealand, or just asking a question because they're just interested in the answer. That's what
I'm interested in.
Oh my God, ideas.
Oh, you know what? Look, I don't want to play this whole thing, but I do think that we should at least let people know about it. Because we watched it. I watched it the other night. We watched it again in here, and
I was actually teared up.
And I could also imagine a lot of people, this is the type of show that people, I would imagine, watch, high.
Definitely.
And it's the CC report, CC report. As
Creationist cat.
Creationist cat. And the cat is associated with Jesus in some fashion. And here, we'll just play a little clip of it. You should go look it up. It's entitled David Rubin, Destroyed by Orbs and Logic. It's a creationist cat. This combination of political commentary and also highly religious cats, I think, is really huge.
Also plugs of our show.
Yeah, and plugs of the show, too.
Now that we've got that out of the way, Ruben! Marianne!
Fight! I love Marianne.
Yes, queen.
That means talk, guys.
Oh, I understand.
Ask her a question, Dave.
Well, just tell me a little bit about yourself. What got you to be the person that is now standing on stage with
All right.
that other crew?
We have been living for the last 40 years under what is, I believe, an illusion that all this money would trickle down from the stockholder class. It would lift all boats.
Dave.
Even if that's at the expense of other stakeholders like workers or the community or the environment.
Dave, she's making sense. She's not supposed to be making sense.
We were sold on that. It has led to the largest wealth inequality since 1929.
Dave!
It has led us to the point where 1% of Americans own more wealth than the
Dave, what are you doing?
And 40% of Americans
Stop her.
in the richest country in the world live with chronic economic anxiety.
Ho, that's great, Marianne, but that's enough of that. Dave, change the subject. Talk about how racism is really coming from the left. You're great at that.
All right. So let's dive into a couple things here. It seems if you watch mainstream media, we are just caught in you're racist, you're a bigot, you're a fascist, you're a homophobe. And unfortunately, and I say this as someone that was, that I still consider myself liberal, a lot of that's coming out of the left and from the Democrats, this labeling of everyone as racist.
All right. Yeah, bitch.
Yeah, right. Well, you're gonna have to go tune into the show.
Just a little bit more.
Oh, that is so good. No, come on, come on. People go check it out. Give this guy some views.
Yeah, Creationist Cat was uploaded on July 20th.
That was amazing.
Yep, I quite enjoy that. Let's check in what's going on in Texas, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, the great state of Texas just recently had to narrow a law that they had written that prohibits government agencies from doing business with any type of contractors who are involved in boycotting Israel. So if you're a speech therapist, for instance, this was the actual case that found that their law was unconstitutional, and they've since changed the law. If you're a speech therapist and you're providing services to some third graders at a local elementary school, you're helping them learn to speak. But you also decided not to buy any products that were made from the occupied territories in Israel. Or you're boycotting them, or you have divested from stocks in any companies that are doing business in Israel. Then the state of Texas can decide not to give you a contract based upon that. The previous version of the law, the state could not have a contract unless you signed a statement saying that you would not boycott Israel. This was one of 25 states that had a measure like this. The new bill doesn't change anything as a defect in that existing law, according to this report. But they did change it in some fashion that supposedly will make it. They keep want to try and pass it. So the flip side of that is when the governor says that no city can decide upon awarding contracts. This is a little bit different. If they find that a company is hostile or discriminates against people. Now, there is already on the federal level laws on the books that say the federal government will not provide a contract to you if you're discriminatory in any way. But apparently, these states' rights guys, because it's localized, they want states' rights, not local rights, states' rights. And so, in a scene that looks like a parody, people assembled in the State House in Texas, where the governor, surrounded by fast food containers filled with, maybe something, or maybe just held as props, signs a bill, sort of like set up like Donald Trump. They're all doing this now. Oh, he is? Well, nevertheless, the way that they surround everybody in these type of signings now.
As a fast food eater, I, for one, am supportive of the normalization of fast food cups on important desks like that.
Yeah, here you go. And he signs, Greg Abbott signs this bill. Here, listen to him now.
Discrimination is not tolerated in Texas.
Pause it. Now, he's going to have to parse this because Chick-fil-A discriminates, at least in terms of like they pay for people to build in societal and institutional discrimination against gay people. But that's not the kind that he means.
No business should be discriminated against simply because its owners gave to a church or to the Salvation Army or to any other religious organization.
What about like a Muslim extremist terrorist organization?
Well, now, come on.
Ooh.
He said religious.
Okay, I mean...
Very shifty, Sunburn.
Muslim
I like
Brotherhood.
Army or to any other religious organization. No business should lose a government contract because of their religious beliefs. The Save Chick-fil-A legislation that I'm about to sign is a victory for religious freedom in Texas. I want to thank Senator Brian Hughes and Representative Mac.
Oh, no, keep going. I want to hear it.
For
'cause it's
leading
so
the way
bizarre.
on this, as well as thank all of our other great members here today. Senator Nelson, obviously, Representative, thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done, not just with this, but everything across the board. And Senator Hall, thank you very much.
Here he goes. He's going to sign it.
Please go cuddly, rodelay, rodelay, ooh. Down with the voice of the moon. Please go cuddly, rodelay, rodeloo. Oh, oh, lady, oh,
Chick-fil-A bill is now law in Texas.
A prince on.
There you go. America.
Progress.
Yes.
Thank God. Against discrimination.
Thank God.
Corporations are people too, my friend.
TPUSA. This is Turning Points USA. This is the organization that is headed by Charlie Kirk that has had numerous problems with racist chapters and hires Dave Rubin to go around the country and give speeches and proclaim that the real problem,
the left is racist,
are the racists, the racists of racists. The bias towards racists on college campuses. These are guys, they keep getting tons of cash, presumably to turn, I guess, young people, I don't know if it's racist.
Fascist generally.
Yeah. I mean, it's unclear what their agenda is. It also occurs to me that they have a tough time making a solid argument. They put out a graphic, which I'm not sure exactly. I guess the idea is to support the Electoral College. They want to firm up support for the Electoral College.
Yeah.
And on some level, I think, oh, they're not very bright. But on another level, maybe they just know their people.
Yeah.
The graphic states, the states in blue have a smaller population than Los Angeles County. Now, not in total. Each state, I think, in and of itself, has a smaller population than Los Angeles County. And frankly, it's the vast majority of states in the country. I think the only ones that are not in blue, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio. Is that Kentucky or Indiana, I think?
Illinois.
Choice
Illinois,
them
sorry.
all blue.
Illinois.
Texas and Florida.
Texas and Florida and California. And obviously California because Los Angeles County. And it says the Electoral College ensures that they have the same voice as the coastal elites. Now, significant number of those states are on the coast, but I don't think that's what they're talking about.
Not those coasts, Sam.
But what it does show is that We have a highly undemocratic system in terms of electing a president. That the concept that we have of one person, one vote is not actually the case. In many of these states, particularly in Los Angeles County, your vote is simply a fraction of one vote, which is why you can have the one person win 3 million more votes than the other. Now, we also see this in gerrymandering too. They should do a little graphic on Wisconsin. 54% of the people voted for Democrats. Republicans won 65% of the seats. That's just the reality. But there it is, TPUSA, either not aware of how anti-democratic their graphic is, or super proud of how anti-democratic the country is.
Yeah, they like that. They don't care about democracy. Like, the base for TPUSA wants Trump to be a dictator. Like, they love it when he does dictator stuff.
They're hostile of democracy.
It reminds me of this, and I think this was actually no, this might have been a joke one, actually. Sorry, but it says,
yeah, I have a feeling
liberal
that is
professors don't discriminate against conservatives, and why do conservatives get lower grades?
Let's just play this clip. We should. In Hong Kong, there are been extensive protests now. People who want greater autonomy from mainland China. And apparently there are these squads of, brown shirts, right? Except for they're wearing white shirts, who begin to beat protesters. It's pretty nuts. Here's some clips of this. They're just coming on to... This is the 6th week of protest, and it's pretty nuts.
Yeah, bashing the umbrellas, which is a symbol for their protest.
It's just horrible.
I mean, my read on this is you look at a lot of places when, they outsource everything from this type of thing to, beatings, to genocide, to paramilitaries and gangs affiliated with the government. So that would be my read.
Well,
if it was a triad, it would be connected to the mainland somehow. And you can have a crackdown that's even more brutal without actually having it obscures the message too. It isn't police. It's like, hey, they shouldn't be doing it, but those are pissed off citizens.
Yeah,
that's my read.
I was wondering who is organizing this, but that's
if they're connected to triads, they could be organized, deployed pretty quickly.
All right, we only have we have time for 2 more calls, and we got a lot of people been hanging on for over an hour, well over an hour. Calling from a 203 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi.
Hi, who's this?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, where are you calling from?
This is Ginger from Stamford, Connecticut.
Ginger, what's on your mind?
How are you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah, I'm calling because I wanted to talk to you guys about a topic that you were discussing on Friday. So I hope it's not a problem bringing it up today.
Sure.
But I wanted to go over the rally that happened in North Carolina, and one of the statements that was made when Trump was describing how he lost his friends after he became president, and he described it as, the friends couldn't, he said choke can't breathe.
I'm sorry. I
And-
can't quite make out what you're saying. Your phone's not great, but a rally in North Carolina, and you were talking about the Trump's rally in North Carolina, and you got your phone's just not great. I'm not fully understanding what you're saying.
Is this better?
A little bit, yeah.
Hello?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm talking about the Trump rally in North Carolina.
right.
When he was describing about losing his friends, he said, since I became president, I've lost all my friends.
Hmm.
You know, they come up to me, they are choking, can't breathe. And immediately when he said that, maybe you guys can go back and listen to the speech to see if you could pick up where he found it, where he said it. But immediately when he said that, it occurred to me, I'm wondering if this guy is trying to mock the decision that came down. I think it came down the same day about Eric Gardner, the family not getting any justice.
Interesting.
And I'm usually not a conspiracy person, but I just got the feeling like he was mocking that particular decision, and I wanted to just get some feedback from you guys to see if
I hadn't seen that. I hadn't seen
about
that segment of the rally. But wait a second. Here.
We have it?
I think we have it here.
7 ladies up here. They always talk. They're not intimidated. No, it's true. I have guys, I have wonderful friends. New York developers, tough guys, smart guys. They're rich, they're this, that. I have middle of the road, I have poor, I have everybody. I have poor guys, middle of the road, and rich guys. Doesn't matter. Rich guys call up. Mr. President, how are you, sir? It's Richard. Oh, good, Rich. Hey, Richard, loosen up. This is a guy used to, hey, Don, how you doing? Let's go to dinner. Now you're, sir, is everything, you're doing good, sir. I said, Richard, call me Donald like you always did. Call me Donald. Always call me Donald. Okay, thank you, Donald. Thank you very much. And then 2 minutes later, Mr. President, it's been so great to... I lost all my friends. They've tightened up. They've choked. You know what that is? They've choked. They can't breathe. Because people have such respect for the office of the presidency.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Who describes losing friends like that? Come on.
I don't know.
Anyway,
it's a
that's all I
weird.
wanted to
It's a
say.
weird
And also
thing to
wanted
do. It's a weird thing to do. But maybe he thinks he's signaling in some way. I have no idea. But
I have one word: dog whistle. You guys are doing a fantastic job.
It's very
Thank
possible.
you for taking my call.
Appreciate the call. I mean, it's very
I think
possible.
It's possible. I agree. I think it's possible.
Just in the fact that it might be on his mind enough. 'Cause, I mean, he's used the phrase choke. That's one of his favorite. I think
he does like that
Actually,
phrase.
if you search his tweets for choke and the word dog, he likes to use the phrase choked like a dog very frequently. He's used it like 18 times. But I totally buy the idea
possible.
that
Glad
it
he
was
doesn't
in
have
the
any pets.
it was in the ether, and he's just like, oh yeah, I'm going to mention choke.
Final IM of the day. I mean, phone call of the day. Calling from a 608 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Mike. I'm calling from Wisconsin.
Mike from Wisconsin. What's on your mind?
You know, I was looking at the sea level rise maps for 2 degrees rise in, 2 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
And if you look at Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania Avenue is underwater.
Oy.
So I think if we're taking climate change seriously, I think we should actually discuss moving the capital to the middle of the country. And I think there's a lot of political upside to that. I think it's a pretty scary thought for lots of people, but the capital should be in the middle of the country anyway. Washington, D.C.
Or maybe the capital
years.
should be positioned in a place that will give them a sense of urgency about the problem.
Maybe we should deal with climate change.
Yeah, you want the capital in Kansas?
Well,
No.
if you want the Midwest
that.
to buy in on the idea of climate change, offer them the opportunity to
Look,
build a city.
This is fake
the
news.
Midwest. The Midwest is
Fake call, fake news.
The Midwest is
Show our
not.
values.
The Midwest is
Show
not
that we're
fundamentally opposed to the
Republican.
government action. That's a myth. I don't know. Like I don't think that.
You know what I think is going to also have them buy into it? The record number of 100-year floods and droughts that they're experiencing.
The Koch brothers see
Farmers-
the Capitol in Wichita. They go, oh, wait a second, there's a problem, Sam.
Farmers are already committing suicide because they can't plant their seeds this year. So I'm pretty sure they're aware of climate change.
Appreciate the call. I think that's maybe a little bit too clever by half.
Little bit.
Folks,
Over
we're
50.
out of time, but we'll be back tomorrow. Until then, adieu.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive